The Hayes family was ecstatic about their new beginning. After years of living in a cramped apartment, they had finally found their dream home in Denver, a sprawling Victorian house with ornate woodwork and a spacious garden. The house had a mysterious charm, standing at the edge of town where it overlooked the Rocky Mountains. It was an ideal place for their daughter, Emily, to grow up, far from the noise and pollution of the city. The move-in day was filled with excitement and a touch of chaos. Boxes were scattered everywhere, furniture was being hauled in, and the family buzzed with plans for how they would arrange their new space. As evening approached, the sun cast long shadows across the property, giving the house an even more enchanting aura. Detective Sarah Thompson, a close friend of the family and an honorary aunt to Emily, arrived to help with the move. Known for her sharp mind and keen observational skills, Sarah was immediately drawn to the house's intricate details and historical architecture. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unique, almost eerie about the place. As the last of the boxes were carried in, Sarah offered to help Karen Hayes, the mother, with unpacking in the attic. The attic was spacious but dimly lit, filled with dust-covered furniture and relics from the past. As they organized, Sarah's attention was caught by a small, partially hidden alcove in the far corner. Curious, she brushed away the cobwebs and pulled out an old, charred book bound in leather. Its pages were brittle, and the text was in Latin, filled with strange symbols and illustrations. "Karen, look at this," Sarah called out, showing her friend the peculiar find. Karen glanced at the book, her brow furrowing. "That looks ancient. Maybe it belonged to the previous owners." "Possibly," Sarah replied, snapping a few photos of the pages with her phone. "I'll check it out later. Might be an interesting piece of history." They continued unpacking, and the rest of the evening passed uneventfully. As night fell, the Hayes family settled into their new home. They had dinner in their cozy kitchen, and afterward Emily went to bed, excited for the adventures the new house would bring. Sarah stayed a while longer, chatting with Karen and her husband, Michael. They reminisced about old times and shared their hopes for the future. Despite the house's welcoming atmosphere, Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. She chalked it up to the stress of moving and bid the family good night, promising to visit again soon. As she drove away, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the charred book. She decided to dig into the house's history at the local library the next day. The Victorian mansion, with its intricate design and peculiar charm, had to have a story, and she was determined to uncover it. Little did she know the mystery she was about to unravel would thrust her into a battle against a malevolent force that had been lying dormant for over a century, waiting for the right moment to strike. Within days of moving in, the Hayes family started experiencing unexplainable events. The first incident happened on a quiet Tuesday evening. Karen was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard Emily's laughter echoing from upstairs. Smiling, she called out, "Emily, are you playing in your room?" No response, just more giggles. Curious, Karen went upstairs to check on her daughter. As she approached Emily's room, the laughter abruptly stopped. She pushed open the door to find Emily sitting quietly on her bed, staring at the window. "Who were you talking to, sweetie?" Karen asked, trying to sound casual. Emily looked up with wide eyes. "The nice lady in the old dress. She was telling me a story." Karen's heart skipped a beat. There was no one else in the house. She brushed it off as Emily's vivid imagination, but couldn't shake the unsettling feeling. The next incident occurred the following night. Michael was working late in his home office when he heard a faint whispering sound. At first he thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder, almost insistent. He stood up and followed the sound down the hallway, stopping in front of a closed door. He hesitated before turning the knob, only to find an empty room. The whispers ceased immediately, leaving Michael unnerved. "Must be the old house settling," he muttered to himself, but the rational explanation did little to ease his discomfort. Over the next week, the occurrences became more frequent and more disturbing. Doors would slam shut on their own, even when there was no draft. Cold drafts would sweep through the house, chilling them to the bone, despite the summer heat outside. Objects moved from their places, and the family began to hear faint, eerie whispers at night, making sleep nearly impossible. Detective Sarah Thompson, intrigued by the peculiar occurrences, decided to investigate further. She couldn't stand seeing her friends so distressed. On a bright Saturday morning, she headed to the local library to delve into the history of the Hayes' new home. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, greeted Sarah warmly. "How can I help you today, Detective?" "I'm looking for any historical records or information on a Victorian house at the edge of town, where the old St. Michael's Church used to stand," Sarah explained. Mrs. Jenkins's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. The old Wilkerson place. There's quite a history there, you know." "Follow me." She led Sarah to the archives section, where they sifted through old newspapers, property records, and town archives. Sarah discovered that the house was built in the late 1800s by a wealthy family named Wilkerson. The property had a dark past. It was constructed on the site of St. Michael's Church, which had mysteriously burned down in 1892 under suspicious circumstances. According to the records, the church was rumored to have housed a powerful demonic entity, trapped by ancient rituals conducted by the local clergy. When the church burned down, the demon was thought to be destroyed, but whispers of its survival persisted among the townsfolk. The Wilkerson family, unaware of the sinister history, built their home on the ruins. Tragedy struck soon after, with the entire family dying under mysterious and violent circumstances. Sarah's heart pounded as she pieced together the information. The charred book she found in the attic was likely a remnant of those ancient rituals meant to trap the demon. With the church destroyed, the demon had no barriers, no bounds. It had been lying dormant, waiting for new inhabitants to terrorize. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah rushed back to the Hayes house. She found Karen and Michael in the living room, discussing the increasingly bizarre events. Emily sat quietly nearby, drawing strange symbols that Sarah recognized from the book. "Karen, Michael, I think I know what's going on," Sarah said urgently. She explained the house's dark history and the presence of the demonic entity. "We need help from someone who understands these things, someone who can perform an exorcism." The Hayes family, though skeptical, trusted Sarah's instincts. They agreed to seek out an expert in demonology, hoping to rid their home of the malevolent spirit that had taken hold. Sarah contacted Father Dominic, a priest with a reputation for handling such cases, and arranged for him to visit the house. One evening, as Sarah dined with the Hayes family, the atmosphere in the house was unusually tense. The earlier events had left everyone on edge, and the looming visit from Father Dominic added to the anxiety. Karen prepared a simple meal, but the clinking of utensils against plates did little to mask the silence hanging over the table. Midway through dinner, Emily began to fidget. She was typically a cheerful child, but now she appeared distracted, her eyes darting around the room as if she were seeing things no one else could. Sarah, seated across from her, noticed the change immediately. "Emily, are you feeling okay?" Sarah asked gently. Emily didn't respond. Instead, she began to hum a strange, haunting melody that none of them recognized. Karen reached out to touch her daughter's hand, but Emily jerked away violently, knocking over her glass of milk. The liquid spread across the table, but no one moved to clean it up. All eyes were on Emily. Suddenly, Emily's head snapped up, and she fixed Sarah with a cold, unblinking stare. Her eyes had darkened, almost black, and her voice, when she spoke, was low and guttural, completely unlike her usual sweet tone. "Tu es captivus demonii," she intoned, her Latin flawless and chilling. Karen gasped, and Michael's face went pale. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. She recognized the phrase, "You are a prisoner of the demon." Before anyone could react, Emily's body convulsed, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. The lights flickered, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Karen and Michael tried to hold Emily down, but she thrashed with unnatural strength, her small frame nearly overpowering them. "We need to get her to a safe place," Sarah shouted over the chaos. "The demon is trying to take full control." They managed to carry Emily to the living room, where Sarah quickly cleared a space on the floor. She instructed Karen to grab blankets and pillows to make Emily as comfortable as possible. Michael, visibly shaken, could only watch helplessly as his daughter writhed in agony. Sarah retrieved the charred book from her bag and began frantically flipping through the pages. She found the section on exorcism rituals, but the ancient text was difficult to decipher. The Latin words swam before her eyes, and the oppressive atmosphere made it hard to concentrate. In the midst of the turmoil, the doorbell rang. Sarah rushed to answer it, praying it was Father Dominic. Sure enough, the priest stood there, clutching a leather bag and a large crucifix. "Detective Thompson, I came as soon as I could," Father Dominic said, his expression grave. "Where is the child?" Sarah led him into the living room. Father Dominic surveyed the scene with a practiced eye, taking in Emily's contorted form and the frightened faces of her parents. "We must act quickly," he said, setting down his bag and taking out several items: holy water, a crucifix, candles, and a rosary. "The demon is strong, but with faith and determination, we can expel it." Father Dominic began to set up a makeshift altar, positioning the candles around Emily in a protective circle. He sprinkled holy water on her, chanting in Latin. Emily screamed and writhed, but Father Dominic's voice remained steady, unwavering. "Omnis spiritus immund, omnis satana potestas, omnis incursio infernalis adversarii, omnis legio, omnis congregatio et secta diabolica," he intoned, his voice growing louder with each word. Sarah joined in, reciting the Latin verses from the book, her voice trembling but resolute. Karen and Michael clung to each other, praying silently as they watched the struggle unfold. As the exorcism continued, the house seemed to come alive. The walls groaned and the whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of malevolent voices. The candles flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Emily's screams intensified, her body convulsing violently. Father Dominic pressed the crucifix to her forehead, his face a mask of determination. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, exorcizo te, immundissime spiritus, he shouted, commanding the demon to leave. Suddenly, Emily arched her back, letting out a final, ear-piercing scream. The room was filled with a blinding light, and for a moment it felt as though time itself had stopped. Then, as quickly as it began, it was over. Emily collapsed, her body limp and still. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a profound silence fell over the room. Father Dominic knelt beside Emily, checking her pulse. "She's alive," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "The demon has been expelled." Karen and Michael rushed to their daughter's side, tears streaming down their faces. Sarah sank to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The battle had been won, but the war was not yet over. The Hayes family had survived the possession, but the demon's presence had left an indelible mark on their lives. As Father Dominic packed up his things, he turned to Sarah. "The demon may be gone, but its influence can linger. You must continue to protect this family, Detective. There are still dark forces at work here." Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthened. She knew this was only the beginning. The charred book and the dark history of the house held more secrets, and she was determined to uncover them. For the sake of the Hayes family and for her own peace of mind, she would not rest until the evil that had haunted their home was banished for good. With Emily's temporary reprieve providing a fragile sense of calm, the Hayes family, Detective Sarah Thompson, and Father Dominic prepared for the final confrontation with the demonic entity. The house, though now quiet, still exuded an underlying menace. Shadows seemed darker, and the air was thick with an oppressive presence. They knew they had to act quickly to prevent the demon from regaining its strength. Father Dominic outlined the plan. "We must perform a binding ritual," he explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "The goal is to trap the demon once more, ensuring it cannot harm anyone again." Sarah, ever the pragmatist, took meticulous notes. "What do we need?" she asked. "The ritual requires several key elements: the charred book, holy water, a blessed crucifix, and a personal item from each family member to create a protective circle," Father Dominic replied. "We also need absolute silence and concentration. Any distraction could be catastrophic." Karen and Michael gathered their personal items: a locket from Karen, Michael's wedding ring, and Emily's favorite teddy bear. Sarah placed these items in a circle, arranging candles around them as Father Dominic began chanting prayers of protection. The dim light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they prepared, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced around, her detective instincts on high alert. "We need to be ready for anything," she whispered to Father Dominic. "This demon won't go down without a fight." The ritual began in earnest as the clock struck midnight. Father Dominic and Sarah took positions around the circle, holding the charred book and the blessed crucifix. The air grew colder, and the sense of foreboding intensified. Father Dominic opened the book, his voice resonating with authority as he recited the Latin incantations. Omnis spiritus immunde, omnis satana potestas, omnis incursio infernalis adversari, omnis legio, omnis congregatio et secta diabolica, in nomine Domini nostri Iesu Christi, eradicare et effugare. As he spoke, the candle's flames grew taller, their light pulsating in rhythm with his words. Sarah joined in, her voice steady despite the tension. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, exorcizo te, immundissime spiritus. Suddenly, a violent wind whipped through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. The house shook, and a guttural, inhuman growl filled the air. Emily, who had been resting on the couch, began to convulse once more, her eyes rolling back in her head. "We must continue," Father Dominic shouted over the noise, his voice unwavering. "Do not let the demon break our concentration." Sarah gripped the crucifix tighter, her knuckles white. She focused on the incantations, pushing aside her fear. The room seemed to warp around them, the walls undulating as if alive. Objects flew off shelves, shattering against the walls. The demon's presence grew more tangible, manifesting as a swirling vortex of darkness at the center of the room. The entity's eyes glowed with malevolent fury, and it spoke in a voice that resonated with pure evil. "You cannot banish me. This house is mine." Father Dominic stepped forward, his faith unwavering. "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to return to the abyss from whence you came." He flung holy water at the vortex, which hissed and recoiled as if burned. The struggle intensified, with the demon lashing out at the circle. Invisible forces clawed at Sarah and Father Dominic, but they stood their ground. The personal items in the circle began to glow, creating a barrier that the demon could not cross. Karen and Michael, though terrified, held each other and prayed silently. They knew that any distraction could doom them all. Emily's convulsions slowed, her breathing becoming more regular as the protective circle took effect. "Now, Sarah," Father Dominic cried, "the final incantation." Sarah, drawing on all her strength, raised the crucifix and recited the last, most powerful lines from the book. "Ego te alligo spiritus immunde in aeternum vinculis. Non revertetur in hoc domo." The room exploded in a blinding light, and a deafening roar filled their ears. The demon's form contorted, twisted, and then was sucked into the book, which snapped shut with a resounding thud. The wind ceased, and an eerie calm settled over the house. Father Dominic, breathing heavily, placed the book back into the alcove. He sealed it with wax and marked it with holy symbols, ensuring the demon could never escape. "It is done," he said, his voice filled with relief. "The demon is bound once more." Sarah collapsed to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Karen and Michael rushed to Emily, who opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart," Karen said, tears streaming down her face. "It's over." As they all embraced, Father Dominic offered a final prayer of protection. The house, once a place of fear and torment, now felt lighter, almost peaceful. They knew that while the immediate danger had passed, they would never forget the horrors they had faced. Detective Sarah Thompson, her belief in the supernatural now solidified, vowed to continue her research. She knew there were other dark forces out there, and she was determined to be prepared for whatever came next. For now, though, the Hayes family was safe, and that was all that mattered. The days following the exorcism were a mix of relief and wariness for the Hayes family. Although the immediate threat of the demonic entity was gone, the scars it left behind were deep. Emily, though safe, was quieter than before, often staring off into space as if still haunted by the ordeal. Karen and Michael took turns staying up at night, watching over her and ensuring that their home remained a place of safety. Detective Sarah Thompson visited frequently, offering her support and helping the family transition back to normalcy. She too felt the weight of the experience. Her encounters with the supernatural had left her more vigilant, her detective instincts now finely attuned to the slightest hint of abnormality. One afternoon, as Sarah sat with Karen in the kitchen, they sipped coffee and reflected on the recent events. The warmth of the sun streaming through the windows contrasted sharply with the cold memories of the exorcism. "Do you think it's really over?" Karen asked, her voice tinged with lingering fear. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on her friend's. "Father Dominic did everything by the book. The demon is bound, but it's natural to feel uneasy after what you've been through. Just take things one day at a time." Karen nodded, grateful for Sarah's presence. "Emily seems different, though, quieter. Do you think she'll ever be the same?" "She's been through a lot," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "But children are resilient. With time, love, and support, she'll heal. Just be patient with her and yourselves." Meanwhile, Father Dominic performed a series of blessings and protective rites on the house. He sprinkled holy water in every room and placed blessed crucifixes above each doorway. "This will help keep any residual darkness at bay," he assured the family. "But the true power comes from your faith and unity." As the days turned into weeks, the Hayes family began to reclaim their home. Michael returned to work and Karen resumed her daily routines, finding solace in normalcy. Emily started to play again, her laughter slowly returning to fill the house with joy. The once oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a growing sense of peace. Sarah, however, remained vigilant. She continued her research, determined to understand more about the dark forces that had invaded the Hayes' lives. Late one night, she revisited the library, diving deeper into the history of St. Michael's Church and its demonic lore. She discovered that the church had been built in the late 1800s by a secretive religious order known for battling dark entities. The charred book she had found was one of their ancient tomes, filled with rituals and incantations designed to trap and bind demons. The church's destruction in 1892 had released the entity, leading to a series of tragedies that culminated in the Hayes' encounter. Sarah's research also revealed that while the binding ritual was powerful, it was not infallible. The demon, though trapped, could still influence the world if certain conditions were met. This knowledge kept Sarah on edge, always alert for signs of the demon's potential return. One evening, as Sarah pored over old documents, her phone rang. It was Karen. "Sarah, could you come over? There's something you need to see." Sarah hurried to the Hayes' house, her heart pounding with apprehension. Karen met her at the door, her face pale. "It's Emily," she said, leading Sarah upstairs to the child's room. Emily sat on her bed, clutching her teddy bear. She looked up at Sarah with wide, frightened eyes. "I had a bad dream," she whispered. "The lady in the old dress was back. She said the bad thing is still here." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Emily, can you show me where you saw her?" Emily pointed to the attic. "Up there." Sarah and Karen exchanged worried glances. "Stay with Emily," Sarah instructed. "I'll check it out." Armed with a flashlight and a crucifix, Sarah ascended the attic stairs. The space was dimly lit, filled with dusty relics and forgotten memories. As she moved the beam of light across the room, she noticed something that hadn't been there before. A set of faint, glowing symbols etched into the floorboards, identical to those in the charred book. Her heart raced as she realized the symbols were a form of summoning circle. The demon's influence wasn't gone. It was trying to return. Sarah quickly took photos and descended the stairs to show Father Dominic. Father Dominic arrived within the hour, his face grave as he examined the symbols. "This is a serious development," he said. "We need to act immediately to prevent the demon from regaining its strength." Together they prepared for another ritual. This time they included the Hayes family, ensuring everyone understood the importance of their faith and unity. They cleansed the attic with holy water and salt, reciting prayers and invoking protective blessings. As they worked, the house seemed to respond, the oppressive feeling dissipating with each word spoken. The symbols faded, and the air grew lighter. By the time they finished, the attic felt cleansed, free of the malevolent presence that had tainted it. Father Dominic placed the charred book back in its alcove, sealing it with holy symbols and wax. "This should hold," he said. "But remember, the strength of this protection relies on your faith and vigilance." In the following weeks, the Hayes family continued to heal. Emily's nightmares became less frequent, and the house felt truly safe for the first time. Sarah remained a close friend and protector, always ready to respond to any signs of supernatural activity. Detective Sarah Thompson's experiences with the Hayes family deepened her understanding of the supernatural world. She knew there were other families, other houses, and other dark entities waiting to be discovered. With renewed determination, she vowed to protect her city from unseen evils, using her unique blend of detective skills and newfound knowledge of the paranormal. The Hayes family, forever grateful to Sarah and Father Dominic, embraced their second chance at a peaceful life. Their home, once a house of horrors, now stood as a testament to their resilience and strength. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, united by their love and faith. And as they looked forward to the future, they knew they were prepared for whatever challenges might come their way.